My stepmom tried to make me sign my late dad's business over to her kids. I smiled and said, "Funny, you didn't know I brought my lawyer too." What happened next wiped the smug look off her face. "Hello, Reddit I plus here. My name is Landon Hayes, I'm 33 years old. And for as long as I can remember, my father's company was the backbone of our family's life. Hayes & Sons Contracting wasn't just a business. It was my father's legacy, something he poured his blood, sweat, and tears into from the ground up. Dad, Richard Hayes, started it when I was just a kid. He had nothing but an old blue pickup, a beat-up toolbox, and a work ethic that put most men to shame. I still remember the smell of sawdust in that truck, the way his hands were always rough and scarred, and the long nights when he'd come home exhausted, but still managed to ask me about my day. By the time I turned 18, he had 30 employees, a fleet of trucks, and contracts with half the county. He always told me, "This will be yours one day, son. I'm building this for you." When Mom died of cancer, I was 14. Losing her was like a hole tearing open in both our lives. For 3 years, it was just me and Dad. We leaned on each other, and most of our time together was spent on job sites or in the cramped office above the workshop. That company wasn't just his livelihood, it was our glue. Then came Denise. Dad met her at a charity dinner organized by the church. She was newly divorced, attractive, polished, and, at least on the surface, warm. She had 2 kids of her own. Trent, 16 at the time, and Alyssa, 15. Dad was lonely, and Denise made him feel like he had another chance at a family. I didn't like her from the start, but I bit my tongue. I wanted Dad to be happy, and he seemed to glow when she was around. Within a year they married. That's when the storm started brewing. Denise was quick to push the idea that we were one family now. Her version of family meant Dad should treat all 3 of us equally in every way, including inheritance. Trent and Alyssa, who never worked a day in the business, were suddenly talked about as if they were co-heirs. I had been swinging hammers since I was 12, spending summers in steel-toed boots while my friends were at the pool. By 19, I could estimate jobs, negotiate contracts, and manage crews on my own. Meanwhile, Trent was getting into trouble with weed, wrecking cars, and barely scraping by in high school. Alyssa was more interested in designer handbags and Instagram followers than actual work, but Denise kept saying things like, "It wouldn't be fair for Landon to get everything. Trent and Alyssa deserve just as much. They're Richard's kids, too." Only, they weren't. Dad tried to compromise. He offered Trent summer work. Trent lasted 3 days before quitting, claiming it was too hot. He invited Alyssa to help in the office. She worked one morning before declaring the job beneath her. Still, Denise kept pressing, saying their skills could benefit the company. The employees hated her interference. She'd show up unannounced at job sites, giving orders, criticizing workers, and pretending she had authority. Dad's crew was loyal to him, but they whispered to me that if she kept it up, good men would walk. When Dad had his first mild heart attack 3 years ago, Denise pounced. She suddenly scheduled meetings with the company accountant and lawyer, saying she needed to understand the business in case something happened. I didn't find out until later that she was prying into succession planning, asking leading questions about asset distribution. Dad told me privately, "Don't worry, son. This company is yours. I've made sure of it. She can't take that away." But I could see the toll it was taking on him. Denise never stopped. She had Trent and Alyssa take a couple of community college business classes, though they barely passed, and paraded it around like they were ready to run a corporation. She documented everything. Pictures of them at business meetings, emails where Dad mentioned letting them sit in on minor decisions. She was building a case. And then, last year, Dad was gone. A massive heart attack. The will was clear. The company, the trucks, the contracts, all of it went to me. Denise got the family home, Dad's personal savings, and a hefty life insurance payout. Trent and Alyssa each had $50,000 college funds already set up, but that wasn't enough for Denise. At the funeral, while I was still trying to breathe through my grief, she whispered to relatives, "This isn't right." Richard wanted all 3 children to share everything she told anyone who would listen, that I manipulated Dad, that I was stealing from Trent and Alyssa. By the time we buried him, half the extended family was looking at me like I was the villain. Afterward, Denise stormed into the office, demanding access to records, barking orders at employees, and spreading rumors that the company was under dispute. I had to bring in the company lawyer, Patricia O'Connor, who had been Dad's trusted counsel for 20 years, just to get Denise banned from the premises. But Denise didn't stop. She organized family barbecues and gatherings where she presented her case with charts and papers showing how much the business was worth, how Trent and Alyssa deserved their share. She even gave a speech at one cookout, tears in her eyes, about how I was dishonoring Dad's legacy. People believed her because she was convincing. She knew how to play the victim. 3 months later, I received a formal invitation printed on embossed stationery. The Hayes family respectfully requests your presence at a meeting regarding the estate of Richard Hayes. It was signed by Denise. I knew it wasn't just another guilt trip. She was plotting something bigger. So I called Patricia. She listened carefully and said, "Your father anticipated this. He told me Denise might try to challenge the will. He took precautions. But Landon, people like her can still cause chaos, even with airtight documents." That's when Patricia gave me an idea. If Denise wanted a formal meeting, I'd give her one, but I wouldn't go alone. The day of the meeting, I walked into a rented conference room at the local hotel. Denise was there, dressed in expensive black slacks, with Trent and Alyssa on either side of her. 2 lawyers sat at the table, thick stacks of papers in front of them. Denise smirked when she saw me. "We're here to finalize things, Landon. It's time you do what's fair." They slid a stack of documents toward me. Papers transferring portions of Hayes and Sons, contracting to her children. I looked at the papers, then I smiled. "The funny thing is," I said slowly, "I brought someone too." The door opened. Patricia walked in, calm and professional, holding a leather binder, and behind her came 2 of Dad's oldest friends, Jake, who had worked with him since the first year of the company, and Mr. Larson, our retired foreman who knew Dad better than almost anyone. Both men had signed affidavits and were ready to testify. Patricia laid out copies of Dad's recorded statements, videos he'd made during estate planning. In them, Dad was crystal clear. The company was mine, and mine alone. He even predicted Denise might try to fight it, warning anyone who listened not to be swayed. Denise's smug expression cracked for the first time. Trent muttered, "This is bull," but Patricia cut him off. She calmly explained that any attempt to contest the will would not only fail, but also put Denise's inheritance, the house, the insurance, the savings, at risk, since most states had no contest clauses. Denise went pale. Her lawyers exchanged nervous looks. I leaned forward and said quietly, "Dad built this with his own hands, and I was there every step of the way. You can't rewrite history, Denise, and you won't steal what he entrusted to me." For the first time, the room was silent. That day, the war ended, not because Denise gave up willingly, but because she realized she couldn't win. But even now, when I walk through the workshop and smell sawdust, I sometimes hear Dad's voice. "Take care of it, son. This is yours." And I intend to keep that promise. After the meeting, I thought it was finally over. Denise had been cornered, her lawyers silenced, her little plan exposed for what it was, a desperate grab for something she didn't earn. But people like Denise don't fold quietly. For a few weeks, there was peace. She kept her distance, and the company breathed easier. Employees stopped asking me in hushed tones if the business was about to change hands. Clients felt reassured when Patricia's letter went out confirming I was the sole owner. But peace in our family was like walking on glass barefoot. You could only take a few steps before the blood started showing. The first attempt came through guilt. One evening, around dinner time, I heard a knock on my front door. Standing there was Alyssa, dressed like she'd just come from some influencer photo shoot. Her eyes were red from crying, or pretending to cry. "Landon," she sniffled, "I know Mom went too far, but Trent and we just want to feel like part of Dad's legacy. He was the closest thing to a real father I ever had. Don't you think he'd want us to be involved?" Her words were carefully chosen, almost convincing, but I remembered Alyssa's own voice, years earlier, when she stormed out of the office after less than an hour of work. "This is disgusting. I'm not going to sit in this dusty hole all summer." I looked her in the eye and said, "If you want to be part of his legacy, then earn it. Come work with us. Start at the bottom like I did. Prove you care about more than just money." Her fake tears dried up instantly. She glared at me, spat out, "You're just as selfish as Mom says," and stormed off. A week later, it was Trent's turn. He cornered me at the supply yard, leaning against my truck like he owned it. "Look, man," he said casually, "I don't care about the drama. Let's just work something out. You cut me in, say, 25%, and I'll stay out of your hair. You know I could make trouble for you if I wanted. It wasn't a request. It was a threat." I laughed in his face. "Trent, you lasted 3 days carrying lumber before you cried about the heat. You couldn't even handle being a laborer, and you think you're entitled to 25% of the company? Get off my truck before I call security." His smirk dropped. He cursed under his breath and stomped off, but I could feel the venom brewing. Denise's next move was manipulation through family. She organized a family dinner inviting uncles, cousins, and even distant relatives. When I walked into the restaurant, she stood up like she was the grieving widow in some soap opera. "Landon," she said loudly, making sure every relative could hear. "We all know your father wanted his children, all his children, to share in his hard work. I'm asking you one last time to reconsider, for the sake of family harmony." Some relatives nodded. A few even clapped. She had been working them behind the scenes, feeding them her version of the story, that Dad wanted everything divided equally but forgot to change the will. I stood at the head of the table and let her finish her little speech. Then I pulled out a USB drive, plugged it into the restaurant's TV, and hit play. It was the video Patricia had kept, the one Dad recorded when finalizing his estate. His voice filled the room. "The company belongs to Landon, and only Landon. He earned it. Anyone who says otherwise does not speak for me." Silence. I looked around the table. "This is the truth. Believe it or not, I don't care. But don't ever accuse me of dishonoring my father again." Denise's face turned scarlet. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, dragging Alyssa and Trent with her. I thought that would finally end it. But Denise wasn't done. She tried one last tactic. Desperation. A few months later, I got a frantic call at midnight. It was Denise. "Landon, please, you have to help us. Trent's in trouble. He got mixed up with the wrong people. We need money fast or something terrible could happen." Her voice was shaking, but I'd learned by then not to trust her performances. "Call the police," I said flatly. "They can't help." "You don't understand," she sobbed. "No, Denise," I said. "I understand perfectly. You want money, and you'll say anything to get it. Don't ever call me again." I hung up. That was the night I finally blocked her number. From then on, I focused on what mattered: running Hayes and Sons, keeping Dad's legacy alive, and taking care of the men and women who had built it alongside him. As for Denise, Trent, and Alyssa, they faded into the background. Word around town was that Trent ended up drifting from job to job, never lasting more than a few months. Alyssa tried to make it big on social media, but without someone else's money propping her up, her brand fizzled out. Denise, well, last I heard, she sold the house Dad left her and moved 2 towns over, still bitter, still scheming. But me? Every time I walk through the workshop and see the sawdust, hear the hum of the tools, and feel the weight of responsibility, I know Dad chose right. His legacy stayed exactly where it belonged,